many would you say, like maybe 1 or 2 years that you've had been studying this? And then more than 2 years. So yeah, great. It's nice to know. Well, the beauty and the depth of the principles are really difficult to explain. It lies beyond the intellect. Oh, did the sound go? I came back. That's why when George talked about not listening like you normally listen, you listen for something else. You listen for a feeling. Because what we're talking about this whole weekend goes beyond the intellect. Now, when I first started looking in this direction 4 or 5 years ago, a friend of mine told me about this, and she brought me on to a workshop with Michael in London, 3-day coaching workshop. And I spent the whole 3 days trying to find out what was he doing, what was the magic trick. Because on the surface level, this might look like many other things. Just when you start coming to it, you get a sense of, there's some great active listening going on. He's wonderful at creating rapport with people. So I was looking for everything that was similar to things that I had studied before. But what I realized was there was something going on underneath, on the deeper level, that I couldn't see what it was. I saw Michael speak to people, and then I saw these huge transformations, and I was like, what's he doing? What's going on? And it intrigued me, so I kept on looking in this direction. I think the next time I went to a seminar was with Aaron in Sweden. And again, my intellect was busy thinking about, is this like mindfulness? Is this like positive psychology? Is this NLP? And maybe many of you have gone through the same thing. Your intellect is trying to compare it with lots of other things. And on the surface level, it might look like many different things. But when you look deeper, there's something else going on. And that's what we want to explore. The principles really point towards a unified richness that can more fully be known as you dive into the flavor of each principle. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to talk about the principles, again, like George did, but I'm going to go even more into how they apply and why we're interested in this. What's the benefits? Why are we looking in this direction? What is it that intrigued me so much and that has created a very different life for me? I've been a business coach and trainer for more than 20 years, and teaching in business has just become such a difference for me now that I know about how thought is being created at each moment. So that's what I want to look at. And also I'm hoping that through this whole weekend you'll get a sense of what lies beneath the surface level. So I'll start with the principle of thought, like George did. And of course many of you already know a lot about this, but that was what got me stuck the most, was really this thing about thought, because I couldn't figure out the difference between thought and thinking. Now the power of thought, the principle of thought, is not our thinking. It's the potential, the unlimited potential that we all have for any thought. It's the principle itself, it's the power itself behind all of your thinking. And it really is unlimited. I read a study that said that we have about between 60,000 and 90,000 thoughts a day. So there's a constant stream of thought that goes through our minds. It's like there's constant mental activity. Of course, we cannot be aware of all of this all at once, thank God. But what we do is we have access to this unlimited power or potential behind thinking. And so we choose to give attention to different thoughts. And what it means to start seeing that thought is not created by anything else than the power, that the feelings that I'm having are created from this thought, not from the actual thing going outside. It's one of the biggest misunderstandings that there is. That whenever we get a sense of that there's something else creating my experience than the actual thing, it's not the traffic that's bumming me out. It's not the weather. When I have a glass of red wine, it really looks like I feel better. It looks that way. But it's actually thought that's creating the experience with the help of consciousness, which I'll get to in a moment. So the realization that every experience that we can have throughout our lives, from the biggest agony to the highest ecstasy, it's all created by this one power. When you start seeing this for yourself, it creates an enormous freedom, because you realize that you can't blame anything on the outside for your experiences. You start seeing that you can take responsibility for the fact that you have taken down as one of these many millions and billions of thoughts and made that true. The freedom lies in that I don't anymore blame anybody. I don't blame my husband. He can't make me happy, and he can't make me angry. It's not him doing it. Even though I love him very much, it's not him making me happy. It's something that's created from within. It also means that I don't become addicted to anything outside, because I know that it's not something else outside that's creating the well-beings on the inside. So when I start realizing that it's thought that's creating every single experience, from the time that I'm born to the time that I die, I become free and more resilient in the face of all the challenges that life, of course, brings us. I don't anymore. George said, he called it in the moment. You can have a feeling in the moment, and that happens to me all the time, that I get caught by a thought, and it seems true. It really does. And you all know this. You start believing that it really is the traffic that's bumming me out. Or I'm happy because the weather is good. Or I'm really upset because my boss is putting too much pressure on me. It looks that way. But as soon as I realize, oh, that's thought that's doing it, that second I'm free. That second there's an enormous sense of well-being that wells up inside from knowing that it's not created from the outside, it's created from within. Now the resilience that creates is something that, especially in business where I teach the most, is something that they're very interested in. Because stress is huge. I live in Denmark, and I'm sure it's the same for you in many other places, that stress is one of the things that is most often talked about in the business life. So they're very interested in hearing about what is this that you can tell us that will reduce our stress. You see, in one sense, it's nice to be able to say, oh, it's my boss, right? It's my boss who's making me stressed, so it's the amount of assignments that I have, or it's because of I don't have enough time. I mean, those are the most typical things that I hear. But once they realize that the only thing that creates stress is actually thought. It's the power of thought. It's the experience that's created from whatever I'm thinking at in the moment. Stress immediately reduces. Is this making sense to you? Many of you have heard about this before. So one of the huge benefits in realizing that thought is creating every moment of our experience is it reduces stress. We become more resilient. And it's also the end of blame, which has so many other wonderful benefits to it, especially in all kinds of relationships. And I know that Linda and George are going to talk a lot more about that in the morning. So those are some of the most wonderful benefits. The power of consciousness. Now, consciousness is the awareness that we have. It's what allows us to be aware of life. Now, we all think, and we're also all aware. Even everything that's alive is aware somehow. It's aware of touch or temperature. I mean, even a leaf on a tree has a small kind of awareness. So everything that's alive has an awareness of life around it. And this awareness is also, as George was saying, it's also what animates our experiences by our senses. So our 5 senses is what allows us to have experience of life. So awareness together with thought makes us have these wonderful experiences, and sometimes excruciating experiences. But it's created through these 2 powers. Now, consciousness is something that that I've been interested in many, many years. I've really been focusing on that more than anything. And what I found when I started looking in this direction was that the sense of there's this space within that is consciousness, and that everything arises in this consciousness. Everything. Thoughts arise in consciousness. You arise in my consciousness right now. This whole experience is arising in my consciousness. And as I see the arising and falling of each of my experiences, every experience I have, every thought I have, as I see that happening, again, there's this freedom within. I don't have to identify with anything that's going on. It's like breath. I breathe in, I breathe out. Experiences are created, and then they fall away. They fall away as soon as I don't fixate on it anymore. So this space inside that the book that I wrote with Dick and Bettinger, we call it home, the space inside that Michael calls it. This is the space that really is a freedom space. The freedom to be able to have any kinds of experiences on the psychological level, but still have complete peace inside. It's quite amazing. An example of that is, for instance, I sometimes suffer from migraine headaches. And if any of you have tried that, it's excruciating. It's really horrible. And all I can do is lie in bed in a dark room and wait until it leaves me. And I found over the past few years that when it happens, I'm able to actually lie and have the pain, but still be in this sense of stillness and peace inside. And that's a completely different story. To be able to have pain or have suffering, psychological suffering, but still having this space inside that's still, that's free, that's able to have compassion with myself. So it's been such a gift to become more aware of this space inside that's always there. In fact, that's one of the big things for me, was to notice that the space inside is the only thing that doesn't change. Your thoughts come and go, your feelings come and go, every single experience comes and goes. Your body changes, it comes and then it goes at some point. But there's a space inside that doesn't change. There's a space inside that's completely untouched by anything you've ever experienced. This means that sometimes I work with people who've suffered from horrible trauma, from rape or violence, and for them to start to see and experience within themselves this space that's completely still, that's completely quiet, that's full of love and compassion and connection. And as they realize this, and they realize that thought is the only thing creating their experiences, and that everything that's happened is gone already. The only way we can have an experience in the moment is by taking down one of those many thoughts and bringing them to life. It's extremely powerful to start seeing that we animate our experience, bring it into life, and then we suffer again. So for people who've suffered trauma in their life, that's often what they do. They continue over and over and over for years to suffer the same trauma. And it's such a relief for them to realize that it's gone. There is no more past. There isn't even a future. There is only this moment. And the more they see that their experiences are created from thought, the more they're able to rest in this present moment and feel the stillness, the love inside, the compassion. Also, another thing that really helps people to relieve the suffering is when they start seeing that the person who did this to them was also innocent in the way that they were believing their thinking. It's what we do, it's a misunderstanding. So when they start seeing that the person who did this to me didn't know what they were doing, they believed their thinking, that's all that happened. I'm not saying that the behavior is okay, it never is. But you can start seeing the innocence in people who've also misunderstood their thinking to be true. So one thing is that they relieve their own suffering by understanding what's creating their experience in the moment. That's one big thing. And the other thing is then to start getting feelings of compassion and sometimes even love and forgiveness for the person who did something to them. So for me, this is one of the most beautiful things that I've realized in beginning to look in this direction, is that there's this space inside that's always there. I can count on it. It doesn't go away. It's always just one shift in consciousness away. Now, I don't live from that place the whole time, but I've learned now that when I am suffering, when I do sometimes still believe my own thinking, and I experience something to be true, or I'm having a problem with something that's challenging me, I don't anymore try and look into my intellect and try and find out what I need to do. I trust that there's this space inside that is informed by something bigger, something larger, something that George also mentioned before, which is mind. So mind is this source and intelligence behind all of life. It is what creates everything. It not only has created everything around us, but it also operates every system. George mentioned how it guides salmon to find their way back. It guides the birds who migrate. I think it's always fascinating the time of year when birds start flying. How do they find these places just thousands and thousands of miles away? There's something that's guiding them. I also find it fascinating how the flowers in my garden, they always find the light. So there's an intelligence behind life that I've always been curious about. I remember as a child going to school and thinking about what is it that it seems like there's something more between heaven and earth. There was things that couldn't be explained by my teachers, and I just had this sense that there's something going on. It's a sense of life and richness and something that's constantly giving of itself. Has any of you had that sense that there's something going on behind the scenes? Well, when I started being introduced to the principles, I started recognizing mind as what I'd been having a sense of my whole life. There's something going on. I didn't have the words for it. Some people call it God. Some people call it the infinite field. I was teaching at the Danish Technical University a few months ago, and I had 5 theoretical physicists that I was explaining this to, and they went, "Oh, sure, that's the quantum field you're talking about, right?" They were complete. I thought that they would throw me out, but they didn't. They said, "Oh, there's nothing, and then we're created, and all we are is particles of light that's coming into looking like like what I'm looking and what you're looking like at each moment. We are created in each moment." And I love the way they said it, because they're theoretical physicists. They don't fool around. They're like really serious about the studies. So the fact that there's something that's creating us in each moment, there's something that's living us, there's something that's making this happen. There's an intelligence that not only creates this, but actually operates the whole system. It's amazing. And again, what it did for me personally to start realizing this and seeing this system in action is that I can rely on it. We don't get frightened when we cut ourselves, and at least if it's a small wound, we know that it's going to heal. Put on something, a Band-Aid, and it'll heal. The body is incredibly powerful and can heal itself if we just get out of the way. This giving of itself that mind does the whole time, this intelligence behind life. When I was writing the book with Dickin, we both talked about how it's like love. Love is giving from yourself without expecting anything back. It's just giving. Now, mind doesn't have doesn't know what it's going to be used for. Right? Mind, it just gives. Life is given to us. And then we can do with it what we want. And depending on our level of consciousness, we'll use it in lots of different ways. But the actual given, the fact that we're given life is like pure love. That's also why Sydney Banks called the three principles. He said, mind is pure love, consciousness is pure love, thought is pure love, because it's constantly giving of itself. Another thing that I love about this realization of something that's constantly living me, we're the principles in action, it's a way of putting it. So we don't do the principles. It's not something that any of us do in here. We're already living it. We are the action. We are the principles in action. And the realization that I've started to have by noticing that I'm part of this amazing system, this intelligence behind life, is that it's like love is in the fabric of my own being. The more I trust that mind has my back, the more I can fall into this space of knowing and trusting, the more compassionate I am with myself and others. I used to be one of these people who would have a whip, a metaphorical whip, and keep pushing myself to reach new places. So the more that I can rest in this sense of mind, the more I can just feel myself being filled up with love, with compassion, and more importantly, with wisdom. Now, wisdom is something that's been guiding you your entire life. It doesn't always seem that way, but wisdom doesn't have to be like this huge epiphany like the one that Sydney Banks had. I haven't had an epiphany of that magnitude. I've had little glimpses of what he speaks about. But I've noticed the more that I trust this wisdom inside of me, the more I can let myself be guided through life in a way that seems to push me in a way gently towards thriving more. Now, the past couple of years I've noticed that I hardly make decisions anymore. It's like a thought will occur to me, and it will usually it'll feel quite normal. If a thought occurs to me and I get really excited, I'm like, nah, don't trust that. If I get too excited or if I get really frightened, I'm thinking, nah, there's something else going on here. It's like I know that my conceptual mind likes to try and fool me sometimes to make me do a certain thing or believe something. But sometimes there's just this movement, and I'll go, I'll call this person, or I'll write an email to that person. There's this gentle movement towards something that almost always points me in a direction where things start moving in an easier way. So I've noticed that there's this sense of well-being that comes up from inside. The more I trust that I am part of this big system, that when I look beyond or underneath the surface level, there's something going on that's just beautiful and rich and deep. and that I can trust, always. It never leaves, it's always there. We're all connected. And the more that we can trust this system and see and experience for ourselves or realize for ourselves how the mind works, the more we also naturally have this sense of wanting to do more in the world. I know that my teammates are going to speak much more about this tomorrow. But really one of the wonderful things that happens through looking in this direction is a really heartfelt move towards wanting to be of service to people. Now, service is not something that I'm doing. It's something that it's a movement that I'm taking. It's very different. I used to be very, like I would have, when I became self-employed a little over 20 years ago, I said to myself, I'm always going to give 10% of my money or time away to people who need it. And it was like 10%, and I was like, I would work out, okay, so every 10th client that I see is going to be free. Now it's not, there's no numbers anymore, it's simply, oh, there's somebody who needs my help. So another one of the really big benefits by immersing yourself into this understanding that we call the three principles, or the inside-out thinking, is that it allows you to become more loving towards other people. You start wanting to do more for other people. And I think that's really beautiful. How am I doing on time? Oh, pretty good. It was about 12 o'clock that we should end. So I hope this gave you a little bit of a sense of some of the benefits that lies within understanding how your mind works. And in a moment I'm going to give the microphone to Lotta, and then, but what I would like you to do while we switch microphones is to just amongst yourselves, just 2 and 2 or whatever suits with somebody you came with or not, just try and see if anything of this resonates with you, because we'd love to hear that, and Lotta would love to take answers